For over a decade, the United States government waged a secret war not against foreign enemies. It's not against spies or terrorists, but against its own citizens. Black leaders, organizers, students, ministers, women, and men who simply dared to demand equality, justice, and dignity in a nation built on promises it refused to keep. This was not conspiracy theory, it was policy, and the name of the operation was COINTELPRO, short for Counterintelligence Program, authorized at the highest levels of the FBI, led by its infamous director J. Edgar Hoover. COINTELPRO's mission was clear: neutralize, disrupt, discredit, and destroy the Black liberation movement by any means necessary. No warrants, no oversight, no accountability, just a government agency using surveillance, lies, infiltration, and even violence to crush the voices calling for change. Today, we're going to uncover the truth behind COINTELPRO, how it targeted the most iconic leaders of the civil rights era, how it shaped the fate of movements, and how its legacy still echoes in America today. If you value truth, justice, and the courage of those who stood tall, hit like Assassination. And let's begin. The birth of COINTELPRO began in 1956. Under the guise of national security, the FBI claimed it was fighting communist infiltration in American society. But by the mid-1960s, COINTELPRO's focus shifted sharply to what Hoover called the Negro problem. His words, internal memos showed that Hoover viewed the civil rights movement not as a moral crusade, but as a threat to the American order, especially when led by charismatic, independent Black leaders who commanded mass loyalty. So the FBI didn't just watch, it acted. COINTELPRO used wiretaps, informants, forged letters, media leaks, and psychological warfare to destabilize organizations and ruin reputations in its targets. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, Fred Hampton, Angela Davis. All were marked not for crimes, but for their influence, their vision, and their refusal to be silent. Let's start with the man who became Hoover's #1 enemy, Martin Luther King Jr. By 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood at the peak of moral authority. His "I Have a Dream" speech at the march on Washington electrified the nation. He was Time magazine's Man of the Year, and in 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. But to J. Edgar Hoover, King wasn't a hero. He was a dangerous Negro, a threat to national security. An FBI memo from Assistant Director William Sullivan called King the most dangerous Negro of the future in this nation. And so the campaign began, under Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy's reluctant approval. The FBI placed wiretaps on King's phones at home, in hotels, and his office. They bugged his bedroom. They followed him across the country. They recorded his private conversations, including his extramarital affairs. When they found no evidence of communism or criminal activity, they changed tactics. They decided to destroy him personally. In November 1964, just before King accepted the Nobel Prize, the FBI sent him an anonymous package. Inside, a tape recording of his private moments and a letter. A letter now infamously known as the suicide letter. It read, "King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is? You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation." The message was clear. Kill yourself or we'll destroy you. King didn't. He called it the most unchristian letter I've ever received. And he kept leading. But the FBI didn't stop. They leaked tapes to journalists. They smeared him to religious leaders. They tried to turn donors and allies against him. Even after his assassination in 1968, the FBI continued trying to block a national holiday in his honor, supplying damaging files to Congress. One of the darkest truths, the FBI didn't just fail to protect King, it spent years trying to break his spirit, and when he wouldn't break, it stood silent as others took his life. Malcolm X. Sowing division to silence a voice if King was the moral conscience of the movement. Malcolm X was its fire. A former convict turned global revolutionary. Malcolm spoke truth to power with a clarity that terrified the establishment. His message? Black people don't need to beg for rights, they need to claim them by any means necessary. The FBI opened a file on Malcolm as early as the 1950s. By the 1960s, he was a prime COINTELPRO target. But the FBI didn't just monitor Malcolm, it engineered his downfall. Malcolm was rising fast within the Nation of Islam, but his growing popularity threatened its leader, Elijah Muhammad. The FBI saw an opportunity. They planted informants inside the Nation of Islam. They sent fake letters, one to Elijah, suggesting Malcolm was plotting to overthrow him. Another to Malcolm, warning that Elijah was planning to kill him, divide and conquer, and it worked. In 1964, Malcolm broke from the Nation of Islam. He formed his own organization. He traveled the world. He began to speak of unity across races. But now, he was vulnerable. The Nation of Islam saw him as a traitor. In the FBI, they knew the threats against him, yet they did nothing to stop what came next. On February 21, 1965, Malcolm X was shot dead in a Harlem ballroom, assassinated by members of the Nation of Islam. 3 men were convicted. But decades later, in 2021, 2 of them, Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam, were exonerated after a reinvestigation revealed the FBI and NYPD had suppressed evidence proving their innocence. To this day, the full truth remains hidden. FBI files on Malcolm X are still partially redacted or missing. But one thing is certain. The FBI didn't just watch the plot unfold. It helped create the conditions for it, as one historian put it. They didn't pull the trigger, but they loaded the gun. Stokely Carmichael. The Black Power target by 1966. A new generation was rising. Stokely Carmichael, just 25 years old, stood on a road in Mississippi and shouted 2 words that would change history: Black Power. It wasn't just a slogan, it was a declaration of independence. Carmichael rejected integration on white terms. He demanded black political and economic power now and to Hoover. That made him one of the most dangerous men in America. Internal FBI memos called him a potential black messiah, someone who could unite the Panthers, SNCC, and other radical groups into a single revolutionary force. That could not be allowed. So COINTELPRO launched Operation Bad Jacketing, the tactic. Falsely accuse a leader of being a government informant. And that's exactly what they did too, Carmichael. The FBI forged letters claiming he was a CIA agent. They sent them to Black Panther leaders. They spread rumors in activist circles. The result? The Panthers denounced Carmichael as a traitor. His own allies turned on him. And when his wife, South African singer Miriam Makeba, faced immigration pressure, many believe orchestrated by the FBI, the couple fled to Guinea, West Africa. Carmichael spent the rest of his life in exile, still speaking truth, but silenced in America. COINTELPRO had won, and the Black Power movement lost one of its brightest minds. Fred Hampton, assassinated by the state of Carmichael, was exiled. Fred Hampton was eliminated. At just 21 years old, Hampton was a genius organizer, chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, a speaker who could move crowds, strategist who built the Rainbow Coalition, uniting Black, Latino, and poor white communities against police brutality and poverty. Hoover called the Panthers the greatest threat to internal security, and Hampton. He was the embodiment of that threat. So the FBI moved in. They recruited William O'Neill, car thief, to become an informant. O'Neill rose to become Hampton's bodyguard and the chief of security for the Chicago Panthers. For months, O'Neill fed the FBI everything: Hampton's schedule, his speeches, even the layout of his apartment. On December 4, 1969, the FBI and Chicago police launched a pre-dawn raid on Hampton's home. They had a floor plan drawn by O'Neill. They had intelligence provided by the FBI, and they had orders to neutralize Hampton. Police fired nearly 100 bullets into the apartment. Hampton, drugged by O'Neill the night before, never woke up. He was shot point-blank in the head twice. His pregnant fiancée, Deborah Johnson, watched in horror as he was murdered in his bed. The police claimed it was a shootout, but ballistics proved otherwise. Only one shot came from inside the apartment. all the rest from the police. It was an assassination. Asterisk, years later, declassified documents revealed the truth. The FBI congratulated the Chicago office. They paid O'Neill $300 bonus. Hoover personally praised the agent in charge. In 1982, the government paid $1.85 million in a civil settlement without admitting guilt. But the message was clear. Fred Hampton was killed by the state, and the FBI was at the center of it. Asterisk, Angela Davis, hunted for her mind COINTELPRO. Didn't only target men. Angela Davis, a brilliant philosopher, communist and activist, became one of the most hunted women in America. In 1970, guns registered to Davis were used in a courtroom takeover in Marin County that ended in bloodshed, though she was not present. The state accused her of conspiracy. Hoover placed her on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, one of the few women ever named. A nationwide manhunt began. She was captured in October 1970, unarmed. In a New York motel, President Nixon called her a dangerous terrorist, but the world responded. The Free Angela Davis movement exploded rallies. Posters, songs by John Lennon and the Rolling Stones. After 16 months in jail, she stood trial in 1972. Asterisk. And the jury delivered a verdict that shook the system. Not guilty on all counts. The state had failed. The movement had won, but the cost was high. Davis later said, "They weren't just trying to imprison me. They were trying to silence the entire movement." Asterisk. Legacy. A warning for today's COINTELPRO was officially shut down in 1971 after being exposed by journalists and whistleblowers. But its legacy lives on, because what COINTEL proved, beyond doubt, is that when a government sees justice as a threat, it will weaponize its power to crush it. It didn't matter if you believed in nonviolence. It didn't matter if you were a scholar, a minister, or a community organizer. Asterisk, if you challenged the system, you were a target. And the most chilling truth? None of these leaders were ever convicted of serious crimes. They were targeted not for what they did, but for what they represented. A vision of a freer, fairer, more just America. Today, we honor King with a holiday. We watch Judas in the Black Messiah. We wear Malcolm X hats. We quote Angela Davis. Asterisk, but let's not forget. The same government that celebrates them now tried to destroy them then. So the question we must ask is, who is being targeted today? Who is being smeared, surveilled, or silenced for daring to speak truth? COINTELPRO wasn't just a chapter in history, it was a warning, and the fight for justice. It's far from over. Asterisk, the leaders COINTELPRO tried to erase didn't vanish. They became legends. Their courage became fuel. Their voices still echo. So if their story moves you, subscribe and share this video. Let's keep their memory alive. And in the comments, tell us who inspires you most from this era. What would you have done if you lived through it? Thank you for watching. Asterisk. Stay vigilant. Stay brave. We'll see you next time.